today we're going to talk about getting together our supplies that we need for container gardening. And, sometimes I just think it's easier to plan for what we want to have so that we're not running around crazy trying to get, oh, where did I put those pruners? Or where are my gardening gloves anyhow? And so we will do some of that today, and then we're going to next week talk about how to try to put them together in an organized fashion. So today it's what are the kinds of things we need. I shouldn't have gone, my computer's jumping on its own. What we kind of need, and then next week we'll talk about how different ways to put our supplies away and organize them. Because I think that we're going to be more likely to do something if we don't have to think, where is something, or what do I need, or where did I put that? So that's what we're going to be doing this week and next week. So we're talking about container gardening. And so I'm going to do a few of the things that are the bigger things that you're going to want to have, or that you probably already do have. And I honestly did not do that. I don't know what's going on there. And then with some of just the things we need in order to garden. So first, just a brief thing on your potting mix that you use in your pots. It's not a garden soil. It's not dirt. There's no dirt in a good potting mix. It's usually made of peat moss and other organic products, along with sometimes they put perlite and things to make the drainage better. Sometimes they add fertilizer to them. A lot of the companies now have some fertilizer going in. And so when you go to the store, and you may already have a favorite potting mix, and if your plants in your pots are doing really, really well, then you don't have to worry about it. But many people have trouble with drainage. The soil's staying too wet, it's too heavy, or it's draining through too fast. Or like in this one here, you see this one that says unacceptable. It has too many uncomposted materials in. And when you're in a pot, I think of it as we need to create the most beautiful home for our plants. And those roots need to be able to grow without coming into a block, no barriers. And when you have all these kinds of sticks and stones and things like this, then those roots are going to hit against it, and they're going to be like, I can't grow. So what am I going to do? I'm either going to stop or I'm going to find another way. But these are also taking up space of healthy soil that is going to help feed them and give them oxygen and moisture. So that's why we don't want these kinds of soils in our pots. Now, so you want a good quality potting mix. And so this is a garden soil. And you see, this is kind of chunky and it's a little bit on the gray-brown color. And I've already talked a little bit about this, but look at how dark and rich this looks. The white little pep things in here are the perlite. It's almost like a styrofoamy kind of substance that, like I said, it helps keep the soil a little looser and improves drainage. And people always ask me, what kind of soil do I recommend? And my go-to has always been black gold, and it's called a potting mix or an all-purpose planting mix. And it's usually sold in your local nurseries. And I know that at least here, Ace Hardware carries it. And it's a national company. And I've been always very, very pleased with it. Then another one is Fox Farms. You might find that in your nurseries, or in Ace again carries it. You know, the big box stores, they will carry Miracle-Gro, they will carry Kellogg's, they'll carry other brands. And, you know, during COVID, I was having soil delivered to me via Amazon. And I said, well, Miracle-Gro, it should be great. Well, it is so heavy, it just retains the moisture. And you don't want it to always be soaking wet or really heavy. And it compacts so that it's just this wet, dense soil material. So I really don't like it. And I've actually been adding, because I have it, I've been adding a little, some nice garden soil to it to loosen it up a little bit, or even some cactus mix to loosen it up a little bit, because it's just so heavy. So I really don't like Miracle-Gro. Now, if you're using it and you're having good luck with it, don't change it. So, and also your local nurseries may have their own mix. And what you want to find always is a broken bag, because then you can pull some out, you can see if it's a nice color like what's in the pot here, and you can have, just see what you're buying. Now also cactus mixes, you'll see that they have a lot more particles in them because they're really trying to make it drain fast. And so there'll be vermiculite as well as sand, and then some soil, and then you'll see that, you know, I don't worry too much about that at all. So then we'll go on from soil, and don't forget, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. So then also you always have a pot that has a hole in it. And if it doesn't have a hole in it, make sure you get a hole put into it. And so your ceramic pots, when you buy them from the nurseries, you're going to want to make sure the holes are in there, or a hole. And it doesn't have to be, you know, about an inch is enough for any sizable pot. You don't have to go crazy with a bunch of them. But then you want to cover the hole with something that will filter the water going out. And a lot of the people back in past times, and even some people now, might use pot shards or stones or things. You don't want to use that because it has no filter mechanism to it. And a pot shard or a stone can clog the hole. And the purpose of the hole, two purposes, is for drainage, and then to also bring oxygen up into the soil from the bottom of the pot. And so it's better to have something that's going to filter the water that's going out and keep the soil in. And so a great thing is screening. And you can go to Ace Hardware again and find out when their screening day is, and ask if you can come in and grab their throwaways, because they cut it and they've got stuff they're throwing away. But also now you can buy repair kits of screening on anything, and even in the hardware stores they'll have it. And so you can just use those pre-cut screenings, and you want to make sure it's non-metallic, which most screening now is. And then if you don't want to get that, or can't get out for that, use a coffee filter. And this woman has put it in flat, but I always folded it to make it be a little bit so that it lasts a little bit longer. And especially in your house plants, that if you use coffee filters, you know, in your smaller pots, it's easy to use them. And you're going to be changing those pots out now and then, and you can replace the coffee filter then. And people have used things like old stockings, you know, just cut stockings up if you still wear them, and knee highs and things like that. Anything that will filter the water coming out. And then you need fertilizer. Now, when you plant in a pot, they have nowhere to go for food except for whatever you supply to them. And I really have to find out what's going on with my computer. Sorry about that. And so when you plant, you would use a time release fertilizer, and it's a pellet form. And as you're watering the plant, it keeps releasing it over time. Don't use those plant spikes of fertilizer, because they concentrate it to one area, and you'll end up burning your roots in that area. It's, you know, one thing maybe out in the landscape, but in pots, it's very contained. And so you want to have the fertilizer spread. And also when you plant, you can also use at the same time an organic fertilizer. and any brand is fine. You'll see it in any store or nursery. And I use both of them because organics still break down over time, but it has different nutrients than the time-release fertilizer. And I've just found that it's a really good mix. So every time we replant a pot, then I use the two fertilizers. And then you want to have some kind of a water-soluble fertilizer, especially if you're doing vegetables, herbs, and flowers, that you would use once they've started growing, once you've planted them, then you would use that every 2 weeks and give them some food, because every time we water, we're actually flushing some of their food out. And so if we keep adding some food for them, then they will do much better. There's some things like orchids and cactus and things that we might dilute the fertilizer a little bit more, but definitely you want to be feeding your plants so that they have somewhere to go with those little roots to get some food. And then you want also to, if you're going to do cactus or succulents in pots, you want to have some kind of rocks to dress the top of it. And it's more than just a dressing the top of the soil. It's more than just a dressing to make it look nice, which it does, but also it helps the water go, when you water, the water goes through the rocks, because of course the rocks don't absorb any moisture. It goes through the rocks and goes down to the roots. And so the fragile area in watering your cactus and succulents is the point where the stem comes out of the soil. And if that area is left to be wet, it will lead towards root rot. And so if you have the layer of rocks there, it makes the water go down to the roots and protects the area around the stem of the plant. And that's why. Plus, I think it looks a lot prettier. Now, these are all planted so you don't even see the dirt. But if you can imagine, you know, a large pot with a succulent like this, and it's sitting up, and then you see the soil under it, it's kind of like, it's dirt. But if you have some nice rocks, or you could use recycled glass, or any of the products that you might have fun seeing out there, that is all fine to use in your cactus and succulents. And then also, one thing that's very important, especially your pots outside, and even the ones inside, is that you have some way of lifting them off the ground. And so because remember I said you have the hole in there that you want to get oxygen through? Well, if that pot's sitting on the floor or on a shelf, there's no way for oxygen to get in there. So we want to lift them. And so you can put them up on pot feet or a stand or on risers. Some of the saucers, this has feet inside a saucer. But some of the saucers now, I've got a couple new pot dollies with wheels, and they have really nice risers as part of the saucer of the dolly. And so the pot's already sitting up. And so when the water drains through, it's not sitting in the water, and there's room for air to move underneath the pot on top of the dolly. And even if you're putting it on your landscape rock, then what you want to do is dig a hole under the drainage hole. So right in the ground, you dig a hole, maybe 4 inches deep, 4 inches around, and that will give some air circulation under there. And it also, there's a lot of moisture coming out of the pot, and other plants in the landscape their roots will be coming over to try to get to the water that's there, and they often will go up into the pot. So if you dig that hole under them, then it deters that happening. It doesn't prevent it totally, because they can be pretty aggressive, but it helps prevent it. And then for your hand watering, you need your hose and nozzle. And so I like this kind of nozzle. I like having the different kinds of settings. You want a jet set, you want a shower setting. I love having a mist setting. And so this kind of trigger or pistol grip kind of nozzle is great. I also like the fireman hose type nozzles. They have the same kind of settings, have different kinds of sprayers, but you do need 2 hands to run this. And so, because you'd be holding it with one and turning it on and off with the other. And sometimes if you're trying to do something else with your other hand, you're like, oh, I've got to put that down in order to do this. So the pistol grip may be better. I guess I kind of like the idea of these, but then I find, well, sometimes I need another hand. And then this kind of nozzle, I want you to stay away from, because this you have to turn the brass part here to change how the water comes out. And invariably, if you're pointed it at a pot, you're going to be spewing the soil out of the pot because it'll be such a hard flow of water. And it's very hard to get it to a shower setting, which is what you want. And so that I X-nay out that one. And so your watering cans for any hand watering, you want, again, one that has the shower, or they call it a rose nozzle or something that is on there. You don't want just the free flowing water of this, because again, the water will come out too hard. If you dump it too far, it's hard to regulate it. And this way you can water the foliage as well as the soil. And then of course, this is for your indoor plants, you know, one with a long nozzle like this. I actually don't have one of these, and I was like, maybe I should for the inside plants. I've used a little water bottle sometimes to get into my succulent pot. But this is nice because you can reach in with the long spout to get it into the root area. And you don't have to try to get some other bigger thing close to those roots or the stems. And so for inside, you want something like that. So more or less outside and inside. And then the other things you would need is, and I talked about this for those, many of you were here last time, I talked about the water meter. And I think for shade and indoor plants, this is really important to have one. And then you want a bucket probably to do things with, carry water, dunk plants that maybe are dry, all kinds of things. And then the watering can, we already talked about, you need something for your garbage collection, and sometimes you use a bucket for that. I hate throwing it on the ground and then having to sweep it all up. So I try to keep something next to me when I'm working with my plants. And the garbage bag is hard because you have to keep opening it unless you have something that you can even put a garbage bag inside a bucket, and then you're just dropping it in there, and it's much easier in the long run. Then you might want a trowel. It depends on how you use, how big of a pot you're using. They also make those little tiny trowels that are more for smaller gardens or succulent gardens, your indoor pots. And then pruners, some kind of pruners. You might want snippers for finer pruning when you're deadheading your flowers, or even scissors. And then if you have any larger shrubs or plants that these aren't large enough to get through, then loppers are something that you would want. And I forgot to fix the spelling on that. Nobody caught me on that, right? So that you have something you can get through, and some of them are extendable. And so if you have a shrub in a pot or a tree in a pot that you want to be able to reach further up, then those are nice. It's something that I don't use very often, but it's nice to have when I really need it. And then you might want some plant supports. The individual stems, like if you have a plant like Lisianthus in the summer and they just tend to bend over, that this kind of support is nice. And then stakes, if you need to stake a plant, or you don't want to trellis it, but you just need to give it some additional support to start out, or tomato kind of supports. And then also, I hadn't seen these before, but these are half rounds that you can either encircle a larger plant or even put it on one side. And I planted a plumbago, and it was just flopping over, and I just wanted to try to get it to start a little more erect. And I found that these worked really, really nice. So there's different kinds of things. And if you just do a search on on Amazon or Gardener Supply, or I don't think you'll find quite the variety of everything when you go into the stores. It just depends on your nursery and what they carry. And then you might need some orchid kind of clips if you wanted to clip something like an orchid would be clipped to a small plant stake. And I've used clips for fastening some burlap to a stake so that when I'm covering the plant, if it's getting too much sun or frost cloth in the winter. And then I love the tape that you can get that's like a Velcro, very lightweight Velcro. And I can attach branches or stems to a trellis or to a stake with this so nicely, and you just can unpeel it and open it back up and move it to where you want it to go and then bring it back in. You do need scissors with these so that you can cut it because it's not self-tearing. And so it's just something very handy. I actually have a trellis in against a wall it's an atrium off of our guest bath, and I'll show you that sometime. But I actually put down invisible thread, like fishing wire kind of thread, coming down from the upper bars, coming down towards the bougainvillea. And because I didn't want to see things coming down that I was going to hang from. And also I didn't want to use that fishing wire type substance against the bougainvillea because I was afraid it would eventually cut the stem. So I brought some loops down, and then I used the tape here to fasten it to the invisible wire. So you don't even see anything that's holding these stems up, and it looks like it's climbing up the wall beautifully towards the trellis that we hung. So you'll understand when I show it to you, but this stuff is really great. And I got this on Amazon. And so I just love it. It's a different kind, and it's not like, you could use twist ties or things like that. And I just find this is so easy to work with, and it's gentle on the plants. So what have I missed? And so I'm going to stop the share. Oh, wait, first I want to show you my other pictures. So advertisements. If you're on Facebook, make sure you go and look for the Element 3 Health Gardening Club Facebook group. We have a group that's growing there, and I post all of the classes there, and we can have conversations there. This is a long link, but if you just go on Facebook and type in Element 3 Health Gardening Club, and it'll come up, and then you can join. I'd love to see you there. And then the class is upcoming. We have next week, as I already said, we're going to plan about how to organize our materials, and then we move into a desert week. And if you have heavy rains where you are, no matter if you're desert or not, but if you have heavy thunderstorms or winds, then we're going to be talking about how to prepare for them and be concerned about your pots and how to protect them and things you can do. And then the end of the month, we're going to do is get started with some succulents. And so those are the things coming up. So I hope you are all set for all of those. And that's the end of that. So we'll stop the share. And I did see my chat come up. Is there a difference? Okay, good question. And if you want to open your videos, it's fine. And yeah, I love seeing you all. Oh, Elaine came. Nice. If you haven't been here before, just throw in the chat where you're from so I have an idea. I know many of you have already told me once or twice or 3 times.
Mary Lee, you have to undo the video from your end.
Oh, because I closed you probably. Let me see if I can. Oops, no. Lauren, ignore what I just did to you. I can ask to start. So I'm sending you a message to start. Hopefully that'll help, because I can't turn it on myself.
Yeah, that worked.
Okay, cool. So are there different fertilizers for different plants? There are It's part of it. Part of the fertilizers being offered are a marketing thing, so that you go and buy one for blooming plants, and you go buy one for vegetable plants, and you go buy one for orchids. And most of the time it's not necessary. You can just get an even like 10, 10, 10, 20, 20, 20 fertilizer, and it's fine, because really you want the plant to grow in a well-rounded way. You want the roots to grow, you want the foliage to grow, you want the flowers to grow. And so we don't really need to spend a lot of extra money trying to boost one, especially the blooms. Now, the only difference is I do believe in getting a citrus fertilizer that's namely for citrus. Here in Arizona, we have I think Arizona Best citrus food, and I really do like that. And there's also things like a palm tree fertilizer, which I don't really fertilize palm trees. I don't know that they really need it. So so I wouldn't bother with the different ones. The only other one is that if you have, like, we have a very high pH water here. And so if we were trying to grow things like azaleas and camellias, which are not that easy to grow here, but we might get the muracid, not muracid, the more acidic fertilizers. I forget the name of it now. It's not muracid, is it? Somebody knows the name of it, I'm sure. I might use the fertilizer that lowers the pH in order for that soil to be more advantageous for those kinds of plants. But otherwise, a basic 10, 10, 10, 10, 20, 20, 20, even there's some that are 5, 5, 5, is fine. And I wouldn't worry about getting anything special. I do think it's how they try to sell more.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. What other questions do you have? And your house plants, I have used in the past a fertilizer that's for house plants, and I think it's just that it's not as concentrated. And what I've done with house plants, and I've used Miracle Grow fertilizer for the water soluble for years, and I have no problem with it whatsoever. I know there's some hubbub about how it's created and things, and you know, like I say, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. But in a house plant, I often will use a quarter strength solution. Like if they say 1 tablespoon to a gallon of water, let's say. So I might use a quarter of that into the gallon and use it every time. And that way I'm not having to remember, when did I fertilize, especially for houseplants. Now, also remember, talk about in houseplants that we tend to overwater them. And so hopefully you're not having to water your houseplants every week. It should be every 2 to 4 weeks, really. I found that even here in where we have very low humidity, if any, that I was watering my houseplants. Now I'm doing them because they're in small pots. So I'm doing them every 2 weeks, and that's in small pots. My larger pots, when I had them in our other house, it was every 3 to 4 weeks. And that's also how you can prevent gnats, you know, the gnats that come out of your soil. And so that's where moisture meter is a great thing to have, because you can put that in there and check to see where, how far down the water is. So, you know, you're not measuring, I don't have my pot right here, but you're not measuring the first 2 inches, you're measuring down where the roots are. And that's where you want to see what the reading is. And you'll find that it's staying wet, you know, a long time in your house plants. And so think about if you need water or not. I have a ZZ. I love ZZ plants. 5 years old, never took it out of the original black container. Should I repot it? It seems happy. Also, should I fertilize it every so often? eventually, I would imagine its roots are going to outgrow the container. How often are you watering it, Nora?
About once a month.
Yeah, ZZ
It's
plants
inside.
are wonderful, and they are like hardly ever need water. They're a plant from Africa, and they're beautiful deep green, and it's great. But I do think if you take the can out of the pot, you have it inside a pot
Yeah.
inside. So if ever you take it out and you see it's like bursting at the seams, and also think about, well, how large is the plant? And how manageable is it to repot? And so you might want to do it more on your own need to get it done before it gets bigger. But I think that the root systems are not that aggressive that it would be, crazy, but I would just pull the can out, see if they're coming out of the holes, or if it's, pushing the pot out or bursting out of the pot at all, then I would definitely repot it. But
Okay.
if it's happy, then it's doing okay.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. What type of root system do cactus have? It depends on the type of cactus or succulent that it is and where it's planted. Because some root systems are grown to support the stature of the plant. And so, I'm thinking about, everybody knows what an agave is. You know what an agave
Yes.
is, okay?
Mhm.
So very, very broad leaves, and they can get, depending what kind it is, they can get huge. And to support the vast upper growth, they have to have a root system that's going to keep them erect. And so some of those roots will go down, some will go out, but also here in the desert, the roots are going to stay more surface because they're trying to get the water. And they're trying to get it from everywhere. But still, they're going to have some, it's not a tap root, but it's like a tap root that's going down. They're trying to find water is what they're doing.
Mhm.
And so, just depends on the growing conditions and the size of the plant and what kind of plant it is. So I can't say like a general thing of root system. But Deanna, is there some specific reason you're asking?
No, I'm growing them inside. They're small yet, so I just wanted to know if and when actually they need to be separated, so I know what the root system is as to what pot I need to get.
What kind of plant?
They're like the hens and chicks types of cacti.
Well, they grow via pups. And
Okay.
okay, this is a good question. So cactus, many succulents, some you propagate through cutting a stem. And we're going to actually be talking about that at the end of the month when we do succulent class. But others grow by what they call pups. So it's a baby that comes out.
Mhm.
And the stem that is attached to the mother will grow the roots once you separate it from the mother. And that's the same with hens and chicks. So if you've got like extras, if you go back to where they're attached to the host, because they're more than one mom. It's a family.
Okay.
And so if you go back and then you'll have there'll be like a stem and it may have some roots on it. If you cut it back close to the host and then plant that part, then that would grow the roots.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, and then you've also asked, I see you have an orchid plant. They easy to grow in your area? Will you be covering orchids in one of your lectures? I certainly will cover. I'm not an orchid expert, but I can certainly talk about orchids. And I'll make a note. And so are they easy to grow here? People will answer that question differently.
Mhm.
You have to have, if you're growing them inside, you can't grow them outside in an uncooled area in the summer here.
Mhm.
And we have no humidity. So I finally have a place where in this house we have bright light in this atrium window. And so they are reflowering, they're growing new flowers there. And I have read from orchid people, the experts, not to use, a lot of people use an ice cube every week or day or something on their orchids. They say, don't do that. And I think the reason is because it's so cold. And so you're introducing this very cold water to them. I water mine every 2 weeks. I drench them, let them drain. And they have, the pot is in an inner pot that doesn't have a hole in the bottom. And so if I want, I keep a little water extra down in the bottom, but I really have found I don't even need to do that. And then I do, they also say you don't need to mist them, but I do mist them because if we are so dry that that I just feel it can't hurt them to have a little extra moisture around them. And they're doing pretty well. So it takes a long time to get a new flower, but it's happening.
Yeah.
And so is it easy? No, but it can be done.
Well, I'm in Florida, as you
Yes.
know, and I had, someone gave me a orchid plant, and after it grew some inside, I took it outside and I had a ponytail palm that split, and in the crux of the palm, I put some sphagnum moss with the orchid, and it had attached itself to the tree.
Yes.
So it was there year round, and it was protected from the fronds, from the top of the palm tree.
Right. Yeah, that's what I did in Hawaii.
That's beautiful. It was so beautiful. It bloomed for a long time because other plants came from it in the
Yeah.
same group, and
Yeah.
it was ongoing bloom. It was so gorgeous.
Yes.
So I'll send you a picture of it, Mary Lee,
Great. That'd be
sometime.
That'd be good. Yeah, if you're in a warm, non-freezing climate, it really needs to stay above 50s. And orchids, just you attach them to a tree. A lot of people would put them on palm trees, but I put them on my bougainvillea. I had another, they call it there a money tree. It's can't remember the name of it, but it's another house plant that grows 20 feet high in Hawaii. And I attached some to there, and you see the roots just climb up the trunk of the tree and the branches, and I would mist those now and then because they were under an overhang, and so I'd wet them a little bit.
Mhm.
And I just used this sphagnum moss, and I had some really good organic twine, natural twine that I used to tie them with, and a friend brought it back from Bali, the twine, and it was really strong stuff. So yeah, if you're in the right climate, you can do it. I wish I could do it here. I have a tree that really I'd have aside, but it gets too cold here in the winter. So, you don't think that about the desert, but it does.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have just a couple more minutes. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Elaine. Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
I had asked you a couple weeks ago about my jasmine plant, and you recommended putting it outside, and I did it, but I didn't put it in the ground. I'm in Northern Ohio. I kept it in the pot and I put it into a bigger pot. It's blooming beautifully.
Oh, nice.
It's just, I'm so glad because I was going to keep it inside and I'm sure it wouldn't have done, what it's doing.
Excellent. I'm so glad. That doesn't make you so happy.
But I will bring it back in before
Yeah.
September.
Yeah,
We could
definitely.
snow.
And if you, depending on the size of pot, if you can get one of those dollies that on wheels so that you can put it on it and then you can move it around into the house more easily than having to lug it around and stuff. So
Outside, I've been picking it up and moving it around.
excellent. Well, that's great. I'm very glad that you asked and that it worked. All right. Any other questions before we take off for the day? So, and is everybody already signed up for the net? Oh, Wanda just got here. I didn't see Wanda before. Hi, Wanda.
Hey, sorry, I was in the art class.
Oh, all right. Yeah, we're just finishing up and I'll be posting the replay
Thank you.
so that you'll be able to see it. And then next week, we've got the whole schedule posted for July. And So hopefully hopefully we don't cross over too much with your other classes. But we always record them, so no worries there. All right, so everyone have a wonderful, wonderful day. And we're coming to the weekend for those who pay attention to the weekend. And I hope to see you all next week, and tell your friends, you know, this is a free opportunity for them. And if they have any problem with getting in or anything, just give them my email, and it's thegardening@element3health.com. And we'll see if we can't increase our numbers, because then as we have more numbers, we learn from each other, because it's not, you guys all have your experience and your expertise and how things are happening for you. And it just helps enrich the learning for everyone, and to have great gardens that we enjoy playing with. Okay,